The story of Esther. This story is about a Jewish woman named Esther who, by her great courage and devotion to God, saved her people from being exterminated by their enemies. This story also explains the evolution of the Jewish festival named Purim. The Greek version of Esther is a story in the third section of the Deuterocanonical books in the Roman Catholic Bible. Here I am presenting you the story of Esther. Once there lived a king named Ahasuerus in Susa, the capital city of Persia. He ruled over 127 provinces all the way from India to Ethiopia. In the third year of his reign, the king gave a banquet for all the governors and the noblemen of the provinces, including his advisors. During that occasion, he made a show of the riches of his imperial court with all its splendor and majesty. Subsequently, he hosted a banquet for all the men in the city of Susa, which lasted for a week. The occasion was held in the garden of the royal palace. Besides this, his wife, Queen Vashti, also hosted a banquet inside the royal palace for all the women. On the last day of the banquet, the king ordered his wife to appear before his guest wearing her royal crown. Since the queen was a beautiful woman, the king wanted to show off her beauty to all his guests. But the queen refused to present herself before the guests. Due to this, the king felt deeply offended in front of the guest, and therefore he became furious with the queen. After consulting his advisors, he made a declaration that the queen should never appear before him. Her royal position would be taken and given to some other woman. Thus, Vashti was removed from the position of a queen. Subsequently, some beautiful young girls were chosen for the post of the queen, and Esther was one among them. Esther was a beautiful young Jewish girl who lived in Susa. She was adopted and brought up by her uncle Mordecai after the death of her parents. They were Jewish exiles who were brought from Jerusalem to Persia. All the selected young girls were given beauty treatment for a year, and then they were presented before the king. The king was pleased with Esther more than anyone else, and thereby he selected her as the queen. Even after becoming a queen, Esther continued to worship God and follow his commandments without abandoning her Jewish ways. It was not the royal life that gave her true happiness, but it was only the closeness to God that made her joyous. But as advised by her uncle Mordecai, she did not reveal to anyone that she was a Jewish girl. One day, two of the king's officers plotted to kill him. Mordecai, who was in a higher position in the king's court, overheard this, and it was brought to the king's notice. As a result, the officers were condemned to death. The king ordered to record this incident in the official records in order to remember the valuable service of Mordecai. In course of time, the king promoted a man named Haman to the position of prime minister due to his unfailing loyalty. Haman was a man of great wisdom. As a prime minister, he occupied the second highest position in the empire. As per the king's order, all the officials had to kneel down and bow to Haman to show their respect. Everyone followed it except Mordecai. When the other officials questioned him, Mordecai said, since he was a Jew, he will not bow down to anyone other than God. Actually, he did not do it out of arrogance or pride, but he wanted to honor only God. On hearing this, Haman became furious. As a result, he intended to kill Mordecai and the whole Jewish community throughout the Persian Empire. Since the king had a great reverence for Haman, he used circumstances in favor of him and misled the king. He said to the king, "Your Majesty, there are a group of people in this empire who do not obey our laws and follow different customs. They commit terrible crimes which threaten the security of the empire. We will never be able to establish a unified government till these people exist. Hence, I request you to issue a decree to put all of them to death because they are always hostile to this government." Since Haman was his loyal minister, the king felt that whatever he did was for the betterment of the empire. So he gave orders to Haman to proceed further. Therefore, a proclamation was made and sent to all the 127 provinces. It stated that on a single day, that is, the 14th day of the 12th month of Adar, all the Jews have to be killed without mercy and their belongings have to be confiscated. Thus, Haman clearly plotted to kill the Jews without knowing that the queen was also a Jew. When Mordecai learned this, he tore his clothes in anguish because an innocent nation was about to be destroyed. He dressed himself in sackcloth, covered his head with ashes, and wailed loudly. When Esther came to know this, she was deeply disturbed. Mordecai requested her to plead with the king to save the Jews. But for Esther, it has been more than a month since the king had sent for her. Moreover, it was a general rule that unless the king called forth a person, he should not appear before him in the courtyard. Whoever breaches this rule will be put to death. Now Esther was baffled and had no clarity in handling this situation. She felt that only God could help her to overcome this disaster. So she requested Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa to fast and pray for 3 days. She assured that she too will do the same in the palace. And after 3 days, she would go to the courtyard to meet the king, even though it is a violation of the law. She knew that she was risking her life, but she had no other choice. As instructed by Esther, all the Jews wore sackcloths, sat in ashes, and fasted for 3 days. They wept and prayed earnestly to God because they were going to die. Queen Esther, in deep agony, took off her splendid robes and put on garments of mourning and grief. Instead of her rich perfumes, she put ashes and dung on her head. Then she earnestly prayed to God. She said, "My Lord, I am all alone. I have no one to turn but to you. Help me. I am about to risk my life. Give me courage, give me the right words to speak when I go in to face the king. Change his heart so that he will turn against Haman, our enemy, and destroy him. Rescue us from this evil man. Take away my fear. In this way, she fasted and prayed for 3 days. Then she wore her royal robes again. Her face was radiantly beautiful, but her heart was terror-struck. However, she gathered up her courage and entered the throne room where the king was seated on his royal throne. When the king saw Esther, he stared at her with fierce anger because the queen was not supposed to appear in front of the courtiers without his acknowledgement. On seeing his anger, Esther was terrified and her face turned pale. She almost fainted and had to lean on her attendant. But God changed the king's anger into tender concern within a fraction of a second. The king quickly rose from his throne and took her in his arms and said, Esther, there is no need to be afraid. Our law applies only to ordinary people and not to you. I am your husband. Tell me what you want. Esther tried to speak, but she fainted again because she was without food for 3 days. The king was panicked and tried to revive her. He understood that she was deeply disturbed. He again asked her, What is it that you want, Esther? Even if it is half of my empire, you shall have it. Since it was not the right place to open up, she replied, If it pleases my lord, I would like you and Haman to be my guest at the banquet that I am hosting tonight. The king accepted her invitation and went to the banquet with Haman. The banquet was exclusively for the king and Haman. The king understood that something was bothering Esther and asked her, Tell me, what do you want? Esther replied, If it pleases my lord, I would like you and Haman to be my guest at another banquet that I am hosting tomorrow. The king agreed and then left with Haman. Now Haman was at cloud 9 and he boasted to his friends and family about the trust which the king had on him and how the queen regarded him. But in spite of all these, his heart was filled with vengeance to kill Mordecai. Now, since he won the favor of both the king and the queen, he felt that it was the right time to request the king to put Mordecai to death. So he happily built a gallows in advance to hang Mordecai, and then he went to get permission from the king. Meanwhile, the Lord kept the king from sleeping that night. So he was going through the past official records. There, he came across the incident where Mordecai saved his life against the plot of the 2 officers. Then he realized that he did not reward Mordecai for this incident. He felt that he should honor Mordecai immediately. At the same time, Haman came there. As soon as the king saw Haman, he said, I wish very much to honor a man. What should I do? Haman felt, whom will the king honor other than me? So he suggested, we have to make that man wear the royal robe of king, mount him on the royal horse, and take him through the city. A nobleman has to announce, see, How the king rewards a man whom he wishes to honor. Haman told all these, anticipating that it will be done to him. But the king said, "Fine, do all that for Mordecai, because he saved my life and we did not honor him." Haman was dumbstruck because he came there with an intention to put Mordecai to death. He had no other choice rather than to follow the king's order. He did everything as instructed by the king. After this incident, Haman felt embarrassed and hurried home. His friends said, "You are beginning to lose your power to Mordecai. He will certainly defeat you, for the living God is with him." After this, Haman went to the second banquet hosted by the queen. During the banquet, the king again asked Esther, "Tell me, what do you want? Even if it is half of my empire, I will give you." Then Esther opened up. "O king, please grant my humble request. My wish is that I may live and my people may live. We all are about to be destroyed." The king was shocked and asked, "Who dares to do such a thing?" Esther answered, "Our enemy is this evil man Haman." Haman was bewildered and trembled before the king. Unable to react to the situation, the king went outside to the garden to think for a while. Realizing that he was in great danger, Haman threw himself down on Esther's couch and begged for mercy. As the king returned to the room in a confused state, seeing Haman near the queen, mistook that he was trying to misbehave with his wife and became more furious. Immediately, Haman was arrested. To add fuel to the fire, one of the officials informed the king that Haman had secretly built a gallows to hang Mordecai. The king was bewildered. How could Haman try to kill Mordecai, who once saved his life? The king understood the plot of Haman and ordered to hang him in that gallows. Thus, Haman was immediately hanged in the same gallows which he built for Mordecai. Now, Esther revealed to the king that Mordecai was her uncle. She threw herself at the king's feet and begged him to stop the evil plot that Haman had made against the Jews. Therefore, the king gave her authority to issue a new proclamation. In that, he gave her the liberty to write whatever she wished for. So a new letter was issued by Esther, which was sent to all the 127 provinces. As per the letter, the Jews were free to live by their own customs and no one should harm them. In case if anyone attacked them, they had the right to defend themselves. It was a joyful day for all the Jews wherever the king's proclamation was posted. Their grief and despair were turned into joy and happiness. Meanwhile, all the 10 sons of Haman were killed. Eventually, Mordecai occupied the position next to the king. He was greatly loved and honored by his fellow Jews because he sought the welfare of his people. Thereafter, that day was celebrated as Purim festival every year by the Jews. Even till date, this festival is celebrated by the Jews in remembrance of their victory over their enemies. The story ends here. Reflection. What do we learn from Haman? The king had a great reverence for Haman. He trusted him too much and felt that whatever he did was for the welfare of the kingdom. Out of the respect the king had for Haman, he passed a rule that all the courtiers should bow down to him. In spite of being gratified with these favors from the king, Haman's heart was burning to take revenge on Mordecai. It was this dreadful quality which led to his downfall. His misdeed not only led to his death but also to the death of all his 10 innocent sons. From this we learn that we should always be happy and satisfied with the bountiful blessings that God has given us instead of hating others. If you do evil to others, the same will befall on you. Even if someone has wronged us in our life, we should place them in the hands of God. He will take care of them. What do we learn from Mordecai? Mordecai was a straightforward person. He was keen in following God's commandments. He was the one who, like a father, raised Esther into a woman with noble qualities. He was not worried about the consequence he might face when he did not bow down to Haman because he was determined not to violate God's law at any cost. It was this quality that gave him victory over his enemies. From this, we learn that God does not evaluate us by our external appearance, but by only what is in our heart. If we are innocent in the eyes of God and live according to His commandments, He will protect us from our enemies, no matter how powerful they are. He will not allow us to be destroyed by them, but in turn, He will punish them. He will turn their evil plots into a blessing for us, as we have seen in this story. What do we learn from Esther? Even after becoming a queen, her heart only longed to be with God. She was not delighted with the riches of the kingdom. She humbled herself even after becoming a queen. She did not take pride in her riches. It is only because of these noble qualities God raised her from being a commoner to a queen. From this we learn that if we possess noble qualities, God will raise us to unknown heights no matter where we are and how we are now. Secondly, when Esther was scared to face the king, she fasted and prayed for God's intervention. Fasting and praying together has a lot of spiritual benefits and it strengthens our intimacy with God. People who fast and pray have testified that their prayer intentions have been answered rapidly. Hence, it is a good practice for us to fast at least once a week. At the last, there may be officials in our workplace who are always hard-hearted and tough to face. In such situations, we have to pray to God and ask for His help. God has the power to change even a hard-hearted person into a soft-hearted person within a fraction of seconds. Nothing is impossible for God. The only thing we have to do is to approach Him and request for His help. Thank you for watching this video. May God bless you. To get new video updates, please subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon.